Good morning, everyone. I hope y'all are having a good post 4th of July Sunday. What did y'all think of all the festivities? Apparently, Nashville was quite the, what should I say, star of the show. I think they did like a whole Disney sponsored 4th of July production. So we watched that. We stayed home, and that's the way I like it. But I'm Leslie B. Welcome. Hello, Sidebar Snoop and Angelita and Dorothy. It's so awesome seeing y'all. And welcome to Book Club. We took last week off. I was in the middle of that Blaze Taylor trial here in Nashville, so I ended up covering that. And it just, I hate to say it, but kind of sucked the life out of me. I had no extra energy to give to anything else as far as this channel goes. Hey, MW and Ruth Ann. It's always good to be with you on your pup walks. And Leanne, I'm going to get to see you soon. I'll be down your way. I head down there, well, about a week and a half, but I'll send you an email. Sidebar Snoop, the DC fireworks were awesome. Yeah, there were some great shows. I just saw on the news, they said in Nashville that a girl was injured at 4th of July when a piece of celebratory bullet fragment was in her back. I'm like, what? Why are people so stupid? So as a gun owner, a gun shooter, or even if you're just shooting someone else's gun, you're responsible for every discharge that comes out of that. Even if it's just shooting it in the air, it's got to go somewhere. It's good to see everybody. Wow, Ruthann, there were over 100 vegetation house fires in the area last night. I don't know the final count. How many burned down? That's awful. You know, it rained here on Friday night, and my husband's always happy when it rains, like right before the 4th, just to give everything at least some moisture. But yeah, let's get into this. We're in the book club. We are on Extreme Punishment, which is the book by Stephen Epstein. And he goes into a lot of details that you really aren't going to hear anywhere else. Now, how much of it is true? How much of it isn't? I don't know. I mean, it's classified as a true story, so I'm not really sure how all that works. But he gives a lot of details. True Crime Wifey, always good to see you. MW says it's raining in Detroit. Hey, Jenny Quilted. Oh, yes, we love the new song. Hey, is it okay, True Crime Wifey, if I play it real quickly? Do you mind? That way we'll just give people a little bit of a chance to come in. And like if you need to make a cup of coffee or just do something else, get settled, you'll have like 4 minutes to get settled. But True Crime Wifey wrote an awesome song. So I just thought I would play this real quick. Lee. It is called New Hair, New Name. And she worked with Suno to make this. So let me play this really quickly, and then we'll jump right into book club, okay? I'm very prepared. I have all my slides ready.
Different signature, different shade of blue. Whispers all around, said we all know it's you. Chameleon smile with an innocent glow. the side behind the door swung open slow. She never heard the word no for long. Deceit and spite kept carrying on. Mama made the phone calls, brother tried to keep it clean, polished every headline till it barely could be seen. Silk gloves hiding fingerprints nobody could ignore. Truth kept knocking behind the locked door. New hair, new name, same old game, changing every picture but the story stays the same. Diamonds in the daylight, secrets after dark, trying to outrun the echo of a single spark. She's living like a queen, soon to be on the lam. She can't pretend all she wants, but she don't give a damn. You can paint the skyline, rewrite every frame, but you can't fool forever with new hair, new name. She could fool the room with a sideways glance, turn a business meeting into a slow dance. Every favor will come with a price. The ones who protected her, they rolled the dice. One by one they have fallen, locked up in a cell. Who will come to save her? Will they ever tell? Shaking her hair, changing her name, she cannot outrun justice. She's part of the chain. Gold in her ears, pearls on her neck, but deep down she's a wreck. Everything she wanted did not come for free. She ruined so many lives, even her own family. Justice walks slowly, gossip runs fast. Some stories fade, but some outlast. Mirrors don't forget what's behind the disguise, even if color contacts tell beautiful lies. Oh, new hair, new name, same old shame, running from the smoke but remembering the blame. Fundraisers and parties can't erase the night. Truth keeps shining through even in the dimmest light. Fortunes may protect you for a little while. She may be dressed up in a perfect smile. Curtains always fall at the end of every play. You can change your look, but the truth won't fade away. She changed her face, the world came to see, but she never could change his memory.
Amazing. Thank you so much for letting us share that. Awesome job, True Crime Wifey. I love what Leanne said. Sounds like a Carrie Underwood. It does. It's a great analogy. Blue River, I owe it to you to watch your video. I have not yet. I thought about it last night, and I was just very involved in all the 4th of July activities, and I'm going to do that today after this live, in fact. But welcome, John Smith. Welcome, everybody. Always happy y'all are here. So, yeah, it's like Carly Simon. I bet you think this song is about you, don't you? I'm not a singer, obviously. All right. Are y'all ready for book club? This is season 2. So the first one we did Unveiling, which was Ruth Markel's book. And then this one we're doing Extreme Punishment. So season 2, this is the 3rd live covering Extreme Punishment. And I have made a playlist. So under playlists on my channel, you can see where I've got the book clubs. I've also made a Blaze Taylor playlist, so it has everything from lives to videos to shorts. So I'm just trying to get better at grouping things. You could spend, y'all, all day in YouTube grouping and doing all the different things. Sidebar Snoop says, y'all remember how Wendy let the Markels see the boys right before Charlie's trial. Now it seems Wendy is talking about letting them see them again, preparing for her trial to look good. Interesting thought. Is she letting them see them again? Or is it just, they're 16, 17 and they can do things? I don't know. But interesting point. All right, let's get into this. Malka, I hope Blaze hasn't slept a night since being convicted. Well, I can tell you he did not sleep last night with all the fireworks. I mean, y'all, that was blocks from the jail where he is currently incarcerated until he gets sent to prison. So, yeah. Good luck, Blazy. Oh, Bruce said they were in discussions. Yeah, awesome. All right, so good morning. Good to see you, Malka. All right, so we are in chapter 8, the Ivory Tower. So we all recall in the interview with Wendy and Detective Isom, she I think has Jane in the room, and she's like, he was in like an ivory tower kind of way. So I went back to Prof's blog, and I don't think I ever totally understood what Prof's blog it was. And maybe y'all did. And I don't want to say I didn't understand. I just would hear it and be like, oh, it's a blog. But it is still to this day, it is a place where attorneys and they just post things and they have like legal discussions, and it's impressive. And I was curious, like, is his first post there? And it is. It says posted by administrators on April 5th, 2005. So he was an administrator because he founded it, and he titled it Aloha. So 2005, we're in what, 2026. So this was over 21 years ago. But this is like one of the many, many accomplishments Dan is remembered for. Welcome to Prof's blog. The long-term mission here is to mimic the format and success of Volokha Conspiracy. Probably mispronounced that. But with at least one twist. First, there will probably be more or only center-left commentary. Doesn't that make it seem like crooked timber or balkanization or left to right? Sort of, but this blog will mostly be by people, and mostly quite junior, including some who might not even be profs yet. Oh, well, let me say something briefly about myself. So this is Dan describing himself. A blogger, ab initio. I am currently a lawyer in DC, about to start teaching in a couple months at Florida State University College of Law, which is located in sweet, sassy Tallahassee, aka Funky T-Town. I write mostly in the area of criminal law and the philosophy of punishment. Does that give you chills? I know we know that was his focus, but anytime I read that and I think about his death, it just gives me chills. But I have opinions on myriad issues, though not too many in Cliff Clavin kind of way. Others who may join this blog are legal academic types, though may choose to write under pseudonyms too. Please see the policy section on the About page if you have questions about comments or emails. So here it is. Bookmark it. Come back regularly. Things will be exciting here. So that was the very first post in the ivory tower, as Wendy might call it, by Dan on Prof's blog. Had y'all read that before? True Crime Wifey says, I'm glad they do fireworks in prisons. Let the inmates hear what they're missing. Tally fireworks were next to the Fed prison last night. Yeah. Yeah, so sad he couldn't see it. I wonder if he could smell the hot dogs from the street vendors, Yeah, sweet, sassy Tallahassee. Yeah, Dan's humor absolutely comes out in that. And we know that that's what Dan and Wendy kind of had nicknamed Tallahassee. Okay, so on to the next slide, the ivory tower. So That prof's blog had more than 250,000 views its first month. And you might hear that and go, but you need to think about that. That was 2005. That's not today, 2026. It was, I would say, pretty cutting edge for its time. He also didn't just post serious stuff on there. I looked for these posts, but I couldn't find them. I don't know if Wendy or somebody had them removed. But he would also post whimsical posts, says Epstein. He would talk about Ben's arrival, his engagement with Wendy, and quote, 56 month of wedded bliss. And he also talked about his introduction to Baby Ruth candy bars, which I'm sure was funny considering his mom's name was Ruth. Whenever I hear the name Baby Ruth, I think of the movie The Caddyshack when they throw it in the pool. It makes me crack up. All right. So we all know that he was also known as the great connector. So he really grew the whole profs community, PRAWFS. They would set up all these meetings and things. They would meet whether it was a restaurant or a bar. He knew everybody. He was always called the great connector, always connecting all these different academic law professors. And he says Dan felt a particularly special kinship with profs' colleagues who were observant Jews. At conferences, they joined together for intimate Shabbat dinners in Dan's hotel room, often with Wendy and the kids. At a conference at the luxurious Ritz-Carlton in Palm Beach, Florida, which I've looked, and it is no longer a Ritz-Carlton, it's called OEAU. A Jewish colleague came up to Dan in the corridor in full-on panic because the hotel didn't serve kosher food. Within 10 minutes, Dan had organized a road trip, he and 5 Jewish colleagues, in a desperate search until they located a rinky-dink kosher deli in West Palm Beach strip mall. Perhaps Dan's greatest gift of all was his tremendous capacity for friendship. His friends, both academic and non-academic, not just amazingly wide, but exceptionally deep as well. I love that he did whatever he could for his friends. Thank you, Leanne. 2005 is just 1 year after Facebook was started and 2 before Facebook really took off in 2007. Dan was a man ahead of his time. Thanks for those facts. That's amazing. I thought this was great too. So, Dan also launched something called the Crime Prof Shadow Conference. A little bit like a crime con, in my opinion, but this was specifically for criminal law professors, and they would meet at the Law and Society Association annual meeting. And I think y'all know because we've talked about it numerous times, but Dan was very, very opposed to the death penalty. And he writes about criminal wrongdoing. Let me read this here. He published an article about it not long after he arrived at Florida State, and he talked about retribution. He said, punishment for criminal wrongdoing is one of the ways society makes clear that one cannot disclaim responsibility for the reasonably foreseeable consequence of one's actions. One of the core notions underlying retributive thought. By his act, the criminal implicitly says, I have greater liberty than you, my fellow citizen. He believed that no individual's right to liberty is greater than any other's, which I thought, wouldn't y'all love to know what his opinion was today on that? I would. And then let me get to this other. So it says too that he was also against victim impact statements, which I found interesting. But as I read on, it sounded like in context to the death penalty. One of the topics he took on was the role of victim impact statements, articulating his strong opposition to victims playing a direct role in the sentencing process. In the context of the death penalty, he cautioned the fear of victim influence on sentencing looms even more menacingly. So it sounds like he meant it for everything, but particularly with the death penalty. Which, what do y'all think about that? I thought really quickly I would show, because I think we all enjoy it, Phil Markel's statement at Donna's sentencing. I have to believe that maybe Dan might have changed his mind, but nonetheless, we sure love it. So I'm gonna play this real quick. It's just like 3 minutes, but we all know it's a classic. Oh, sidebar Snoop, excellent. He would have been against the jury deciding Blaze's sentence. Yeah.
If you please could tell us your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Phil Markel. I'm Danny's father. Judge Everett, I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the impact of Donna Adelson's actions on my families and the families of so many others. While this victim impact statement is addressed to you, Your Honor, it is also intended for the Adelson family, Harvey, Charlie, Wendy, and particularly Donna. I would like them to understand and reflect on the deep and irreparable damage they have caused. The pain that they have caused my family is obvious and permanent, but they have also caused lifelong harm to their own immediate family and so many other families and children around. Donna's selfishness, cruelty, and complete disrespect for human life, along with that of her co-conspirators, have left families forever broken. Louis Rivera, his children have no father. Catherine Magbanawa and Sigfredo Garcia, their children have no parents. Charlie Adelson, his son, Roman, has no father. Rob Adelson and his wife and their 2 children have lost their uncle and grandparents. Shelley and Ian, my daughter, their 3 children, my grandchildren, are left without an uncle and are separated from their cousins. Of course, their heinous and callous actions have left me, Ruth, and Shelley without our Danny, and Ben and Lincoln without their father. For anyone to commit such a cold-blooded, unprovoked act of murder is horrific. For Donna, someone who claims to care so much about Ben and Lincoln, her sun shines. Her actions are beyond comprehension. She has harmed forever the people she claims to have loved. In the Jewish custom, we have an expression to always wish others to live to 120 years of age. For Donna, I wish her to live to 120, alone in her jail cell. I wish that every day of her remaining days, she thinks about the harm she has caused to so many, especially those 2 boys she claims to have loved so much. For these reasons, Your Honor, I ask the court sentence Donna Adelson to the maximum possible sentence. And my only short question to Donna, was it worth it? Respectfully, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Markel.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Markel. Yeah, Ruth Ann, that's interesting. Both his parents gave great victim impact statements. Jenny says if he were in Phil's shoes, he might have felt differently. Sure, I totally agree. I would love to hear their opinions on that. Sidebar Snoop, we should all attend Wendy's trial wearing shirts that say, was it worth it? Right? MW, I feel the death penalty is justified in certain cases. Absolutely. MW, certainly, victim impact statements are a necessary part of the judicial system. I agree. Sidebar Snoop, I don't think anyone knows their true feelings on crime and justice until it happens to them or someone they love. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Jenny, Phil and Ruth's statements are amazing. Donna just can't handle it. I love it. Yes, agree. True crime wifey. Donna sat there shaking her head. I know. Watching her just shake. That's more anger than like devastation or claiming I'm innocent, right? Leanne says Dan seemed rigid, not a bad thing, about certain aspects of criminal law, especially when it came to sentencing. He wanted the law to prevail rather than sentences being influenced by victims. Yes. True crime wifey. So Jackie Fulford nodded her head during the impact statements. Yeah, is that a movement she didn't realize she was making? All right. So then I thought this part was also interesting about incest. So I'm reading on page 132 and 133. Another area on which his scholarship focused is the interaction between family status and criminal law. In April 2009, Oxford University Press published a synthesized version of the articles in book form entitled Privilege or Punish: Criminal Justice and the Challenge of Family Ties, which Dan dedicated to Wendy. Quote, my everything, my world without end. Then I'm going to read this paragraph. It's on page 133 in the middle for those of you following along. The most controversial argument presented in Privilege or Punish was that incest, so long as it is consensual, shouldn't be punishable under the criminal law. Dan and his co-authors asserted that criminal prosecution isn't necessary to prevent such conduct because, quote, most of these relationships will be deterred by social stigma, unquote. Their opinions diverged, however, on applying this rationale to minors, with Dan alone arguing in favor of decriminalizing consensual sexual acts among relatives who'd reached the age of consent. He suggested that it should be immaterial from the state's perspective whether such activity occurs between brothers, first cousins, or friends. I'm going to hear y'all's comments on that. True crime wifey. Idaho just passed a law that child preds can get DP now. It's the egregious cases against children. Wow. Yeah. MW. Donna needs to stop shaking her head. Yep, I agree. MW. I wonder what Donna would say if she could answer that question. Was it worth it? Audrey. Good morning, Leslie. Good morning, everybody. I'm driving to work. Good morning, Audrey. Be safe driving. The day after all the bombs exploded last night, keeping me awake. I'm so tired. Thank God it's my Friday. Jury duty tomorrow. Oh, well, good luck tomorrow. And I hear you. I was hearing fireworks going off well after 1 a.m., which is ridiculous. Where are the parents? True crime wifey. I'm glad Donna had to sit there and did not get kicked out for her behavior. Completely agree. And I bet that was some of Everett's thoughts. Donna needed to hear those words. Yes, sidebar Snoop. I still say and stand by this opinion. Dan was destined for SCOTUS, now the Supreme Court. I don't think you're wrong. Okay. Then did y'all know that Dan published 18 law review articles in elite journals during just 5 years of his academia career? And some of those journals included Harvard, Yale, Cornell, UC Berkeley, Northwestern, Penn, UVA, and Texas. He was quoted in magazines and newspapers, interviewed on CNN, BBC Russia, and others. I was trying to find like any of those interviews. I didn't. I did not spend a huge time searching, but I want to go back and search some more. Hey, Peachy Keen, welcome. Happy the day after Independence Day. I was shooting long after 1 a.m. You were, or your neighbors were. Then I love that Dan really had no tolerance for tardy students. He really wanted his students to succeed. He wanted them to have a complete buy-in on their education. This is page 134. He would be bitterly disappointed when they showed up late or unprepared, or when he detected them surfing the internet on their laptops or texting instead of focusing on him. On occasion, he'd lock the classroom doors the moment class began. When he didn't, he'd berate students who sauntered into the classroom a few minutes late, instructing those who arrived even later to leave. Because he was such a stickler for punctuality, it wasn't uncommon to see students racing through hallways to make it to his class on time. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I like that. I mean, you need to it's disruptive to the professor, other students who are there on time. Are there exceptions? Sure. I mean, somebody's an emergency, something happens. But you know, those people that can just always show up late. I liked it. He had a reputation for being intense and aggressive in his use of Socratic method, or a hard ass. He would often push students beyond their comfort zone, trying to get them to think outside the box. Brighter students would rise to the occasion. Weaker students, however, would wither under pressure. Yeah, I mean, being an attorney is not for the faint of heart. True crime wifey. I don't agree with a lot of Dan's views, but my viewpoints and experiences were different from his. I will still fight for full justice. Agree. Peachy Keen. Didn't say fireworks. Good for you. Sidebar Snoop. My dog slept through fireworks. She's special. That's good. Okay, so this wasn't totally related to the book, but I had to share this. So just talking about how students respected him, and many did gather for, there were so many different memorials around, but this is a photo from students and faculty gathering to pay respects to Dan. Is there anybody that looks familiar in this photo? Place your comments in the chat. True crime wife. Yes, Jeffrey Lacasse. Yeah. And I believe he says Wendy was mad that he went, right? I'm not making that up, right? Yep. So there's young Jeff right there. All right, Leanne, be safe in this heat. Yeah, Jeff. Jeff was there. Don't you know that had an impact of sinking in some, right? All right, we'll continue on. And I don't know, my format got screwed up on this side, but that's okay. Continuing on. So this is about, so Dan was really being sought after. So page 137, they talk about the University of Houston. So Florida State Law School was on the rise, okay? They kept going up in the rankings as to what kind of law school it was. But he got another lateral offer from the University of Houston. At that time, Houston Law stood at number 59 in that year's rankings. The dean offered Dan a 50% salary increase from $120,000 to $180,000. In addition to an immediate grant of tenure, in late April 2009, Dan and his very pregnant wife hopped onto an airplane to get a better sense of what living in the nation's fourth largest city might be like. But they had been in Tallahassee for about 4 years, and Dan was not itching to leave Tallahassee for something better. The sleepy town that had seemed so alien to him when he and Wendy arrived in 2005 had grown on Dan considerably. He had formed numerous close friendships and felt fully invested in the local community, especially its Jewish population. It's kind of like when you're somewhere smaller, right? You can have a greater impact. Like you're not lost in a big city like you might be in Houston. Funky T-Town, as much as a home to him as Boston or DC had ever been, Dan felt a deep sense of belonging he wasn't sure he could replicate anywhere else. He says, Epstein states that the University of Houston's offer was tempting. Dan ultimately decided to leverage it to improve his compensation package at Florida State. The dean at the time, Don Widener, couldn't bear the prospect of losing his most prolific scholar. And though he couldn't offer him immediate tenure, just because Florida State had such rigid requirements, Dan would have to wait another year. He told Dan that if he rejected the Houston's offer, he'd bestow on him an endowed professorship named for Sandy D'Alemberte, a former dean of the law school, longtime president of the entire university. Dan gladly accepted the professorship, becoming the only faculty member in the law school's history to be awarded an endowed position prior to achieving tenure. It was quite the feather in his cap. In addition, his salary was bumped from $120,000 to $167,000, and the dean promised to increase it to $180,000 within a year. Considering the low cost of living in Tallahassee, he and Wendy were going to be far better off financially than if he had accepted Houston Law's offer. And just like that, Dan went from one of the lower paid members of Florida State's faculty to one of the highest. I thought that was impressive. Yes. That's a great way to say it, Drew Crumb My Feet. Dan was a big fish in a little pond in Tallahassee. I swear, my little dog, Katie, so she's like pawing to get up. So I reach down to pick her up, and then she scurries away. Why do dogs do that? Okay. Yeah, sidebar Snoop. Great point. And now Wendy is in Texas. Irony. Hey, Jolie. Good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Happy you could be here. Oh, thanks, True Crime Wifey, for telling us that. You met Sandy when I worked at FSU. He was the president. Everyone loved him. That's great. I love that you got to meet him. I didn't realize it was a man. I was making an assumption. Crows and Gallows. Evening, everyone. Hope everyone had a great 4th of July. Thank you. Peachy King. Yeah. T-Town, Tuscaloosa, Transylvania, Tonytown, Arkansas, Tennessee. Yeah. Hey, little Miss Red Velvet, just pumping in to say hi for a few days in Spain, chilling on the balcony before going out to eat. How are y'all? Well, tell us what you eat in Spain. We'd love to hear. Yes, we love True Crime Wifey's new song. Okay, now this was interesting. Let's see. So, yeah, Florida State, from when he started or when he was first offered this job with Florida State, they were number 67, y'all. And in his short time there, they had already moved up to number 45. And that's according to US News. You know how they do the college rankings. But then he talks about Wendy's career, which I thought was interesting. Let me get to that. I thought this was ironic, but just talking about how Dan would often meet with other fellow colleagues and things that were going through divorce. And it would say, It said, Dan downed more than a few glasses of bourbon while lending an empathetic ear. So here's my question. Was bourbon Dan's favorite drink? Is there even more irony to the bullet bourbon? I'll leave it there. I don't know. All right. So this is page 139 if you're following along. But Epstein explains that Wendy's career was on an entirely different trajectory than her husband's. Her salary was $35,000 and was funded by a grant. And her office was not quite the same as Dan's. So I am going to show y'all what her office was in this building. I have it on the screen. Murder by Maestro had told me he likes when we have visual aids. So I'm trying to do more. So it is the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights. So it was this old building. And I think if any of y'all went to, I mean, I know where I was in college. Yes, there were these big, large, beautiful brick buildings, but then there's a lot of like old historic kind of houses or whatever have you that are different offices and things. So she was an adjunct professor there. He writes, the dilapidated staircase at the front entrance of the converted home housing for the Center for the Advancement of Human Rights and her shoebox-sized office, the building's water heater just a few inches from her desk, couldn't have contrasted more from the ivory tower setting across the street in which Dan and his colleagues were comfortably ensconced. So her office is in there, and Dan's is in here in the College of Law. Sidebar Snoop says, Wendy didn't have a career. She had connections. Jenny quilted. Oh my God, the bourbon. I know, that's how I felt too. True crime wifey. Oh my goodness, it wouldn't surprise me at all. Evil Wendy would do something like that, in my opinion. Right? Little Miss Red Velvet. To eat probably some fresh, locally caught fish, big Mediterranean salad with a nice cold beer. Crows and Gallows. Yes, too many coincidences to be a coincidence. Oh, yes. Sidebar Snoop. Mommy and daddy can buy you degrees, but not a career. But just look at the difference, y'all, in the office. It had to just be like a thorn in her side, right? Can you imagine like a hot water heater by your desk? Now, again, is this all factual? I'm assuming, but okay, moving on. Then Epstein gets into Wendy's book. Well, before I get there, let's talk about. So when the University of Houston offered Dan a tenured position in April 2009, Wendy was a part of his package deal. A job as a director of the law school's immigration clinic, all but guaranteed, though she considered the clinical position her dream job. With her firstborn's arrival expected a month before her likely starting date, the timing just wasn't right. As enticing as the prospect was of directing one of the premier immigration clinics in the country, Wendy couldn't fathom being 1,150 miles from her family with a newborn in tow. For the moment at least, she was content remaining in Tallahassee, advocating on behalf of the immigrant women and children for whom she was playing such a vital role. Also, as Dan was continuing to have all these different articles published in these premier law journals, her articles were published by journals such as the University of St. Thomas Law and Journal of Transnational Law and Policy. Then he writes, while drafting those pieces, Wendy felt an intense calling to tell her clients' stories in a different way, one accessible to ordinary people rather than high-browed academics. As she'd later write, she wanted to, quote, give voice to a population that often has none. educate everyday folks. How criminals and traffickers exploit human vulnerabilities, what that experience of being trafficked is really like, and the struggle to piece together broken lives when and if it ends. So, what her result was, her book that she penned that we know, This Is Our Story, 276 pages. And let's just give a big shout out to True Crime Wifey, who has taken one for the team in reading this. And I just got to say, God bless you. True Crime Wifey, FSU has torn down a lot of the old houses. I worked at the Center for Civic Education, which was old too. Do you know if they've torn down that one? I'm guessing no, if it's still on the FSU website, but I could be wrong. Sidebar Snoop. Sadly, Dan was nothing more to Donna and Wendy other than picking Premier DNA. MW. She wouldn't have gotten a job if it wasn't for him. Little Miss Red Velvet. Dan was too good for Wendy. Yeah. So it talks about her book. Its cover featured Wendy's partially obscured face and penetrating turquoise blue left eye, an image captured and photoshopped by her dad. For nearly 2 years, Wendy reached out to agents and publishers hoping to find a suitable landing place for her debut novel. A huge pile of rejections later, she ended up self-publishing on Amazon. This Is Our Story's 46 chapters alternate the first-person narratives of Lily Walker Stone, a corporate attorney turned public interest lawyer, and her clients Rosa and Mila. The story begins about Rosa living in poverty in Argentina and visits with a Miami businesswoman, Sonora Conseca. I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyhow, then a diabolical monster. It sounds like it gets kind of rough, that she gets sexually abused and impregnates. I mean, it's very detailed here. Mila thought she was going to New York, but instead ended up gutting chickens at a Chinese restaurant in Atlanta owned by 2 Hispanic brothers, and one ended up raping her. Then he says, throughout the book, Wendy's wry sense of humor is on full display. Wendy reveals that Rosa and Mila are composite characters embodying many of the stories she heard while practicing immigration law. Thank you, Jolie. I appreciate that reminder. If y'all don't mind liking and subscribing, I would love that. I appreciate you. That building where Wendy worked is still there. Thank you for letting us know. Oh, okay. True Crime Wifey is reading the book currently. She says Wendy is their savior in her book. The book is very graphic. Sidebar Snape. The fact that Harvey photoshopped all of his daughter's photo is creepy as hell. That's not normal. Yeah. Blue River, thank you. You know, Spanish, definitely not my forte. Audrey, Wendy going to take to rejection. She molded herself so that Dan would like her because she's a narcissist psychopath. Love your deep thoughts, Audrey. Little Miss Red Velvet. Leslie B, I hyped you the other day. Thank you. Peachy, hey, lay off ATL, Wendy, Stormy, Antichrist. Yeah. She likes gore. Yeah. All right. Just as her career was finally taken off, Wendy's position at the Center for Advancement of Human Rights was eliminated when the funding for her job dried up. But Dan quickly sprang into action, lobbying the dean at the law school to create a position for his wife on Florida State's clinical faculty. Thanks to her husband's efforts, and this is on page 143, in August 2011, Wendy became a visiting clinical professor. She would be directing the brand new medical legal partnership and expansion of the law school's public interest law center and its clinical faculty. And she also had a salary now at $85,000. So she was at 35. So she's got a $50,000 increase. So what her new job would be was each semester, Wendy supervised 10 students. They were 2Ls and 3Ls, so in their second and third years of law school, who also represented homeless, indigent, and undocumented patients at the Neighborhood Medical Center, a free community health clinic. Wendy and her students helped clients file and prosecute disability claims and represent them at immigration proceedings in Orlando. So in December 2012, she received another promotion. The word visiting was dropped from her title, and she became a permanent member of the law faculty, at least in the name. In August 2013, her salary increased to $100,000. The following spring, the administration at Florida State's main campus selected This Is Our Story as assigned summer reading for all 7,000 incoming students as part of its One Book, One Campus initiative. Wendy, its author, was selected to serve as the keynote speaker for the new student convocation, where the entire class of 2018 would be in attendance. Donna and Harvey couldn't have been any prouder. I remember Rashbaum quotes Charlie saying, "Did you say that's effing awesome?" And Charlie's like, "Yeah." In August 2014, a large swath of Florida State's faculty took their positions on stage at the basketball arena. Each of them presumably had read Wendy's novel. But when it came time for the keynote address, a former colleague of Wendy's approached the podium instead. It was 5 weeks following Dan Markel's savage execution, and neither Wendy nor her proud parents were anywhere in sight. What do y'all think about that? All right, moving on. Chapter 9. It is Pearl Harbor, which we all know was the day that Wendy calls Dan and say, "I'm divorcing, I'm leaving you." So we know Dan was up at NYU Law School in Greenwich Village, and his iPhone started ringing, and she had not responded to his calls or texts for days while he was out of town. Dan had really curated this whole meeting. Originally, it had started with invitees of just like 20 people, and now it was up to over 200. People would travel from places such as Israel, England, Canada, and California. When he noticed his iPhone vibrating, he saw Wendy's name appear on the screen. He said, "Hello?" She says, "I'm leaving and taking the boys with me." "What?" Dan exclaimed. "I'm filing for divorce." "Please don't do that. Let me come home first and we'll talk. I'll be on the first flight back. Please don't do anything rash until I get there." The next thing he heard was the clicking sound terminating their connection. So he went back into the room where he was meeting, gathered his things, and everybody noticed that the blood had drained from his face. And he said he had a personal matter and he wouldn't be there after all. So Dan travels home over 1,000 miles away, and he said it was like a meticulously designed military operation. Donna and Harvey had been there throughout the weekend, helping supervise and execute a plan they and Wendy had hatched together early that summer. Professional movers were loading furniture into the truck while Wendy's friends helped her pack up the last of clothes, accessories, jewelry, and the kids' clothing and toys. They'd already begun adjusting, the boys, that is. They were at their new home on Aqua Ridge Way, where, unbeknownst to their dad, they'd been living since Friday. So this was Monday. Dan pulled into his garage. The gravity, which I also just found ironic. I mean, so like sees it all already, what it's going to be like in this house in the garage, which we also know is where he took essentially his last living moments. When Dan pulled into his garage, the gravity of the situation became immediately apparent. The shelving sections ringing its walls had disappeared, everything resting upon them gone. Bicycle, designer luggage, tennis racket, and the kids' toys. He walked into the house. Half the living room furniture was gone, glaring empty spaces where chairs and couches once sat. Though the dining room table was still there, half the chairs were missing. Dishes and silverware had vanished from the kitchen cabinets, as had most of the food from the pantry and the refrigerator. You know, when you move, like moving out the food in the fridge, I don't know about y'all. I'm like, I don't even feel like moving this. You know, when you get down to moving, you're like, I'm so over it. I throw it away because it's like, you know what? Let's just all start over and get new stuff. Because if you're like me, your condiments are probably a lot of them getting expired or close to it or are expired. Sidebar Snoop, between Dan's salary and Wendy's salary increase, they were living a very privileged life, but she traded it for extremely overpriced apartment in Miami with bunk beds for the boys. Idiot. I agree. Yeah, I agree. They were making great money for Tallahassee. Agree, true crime wifey. Sidebar Stoop. Nothing was good enough for Wendy. Donna raised her to believe she was a princess. Yeah. Sarah says, hi, Leslie B. Hi, mods, fellow channel members. A justice for Dan Markel. Arrest Wendy Jill. Thank you. Crows and Gallows. Wendy is pure evil. She's the architect of Dan's murder. Yes. Sidebar Snoop. She took the damn food. Right? Sweet Jesus. True crime wifey. Wendy told Dan's friends that he was abusive. Yep. It wasn't true. She fooled lots of people. Yeah. Jenny, excellent point. She didn't want most of that stuff. She just didn't want him to have it. She wanted to stick it to him. Blue River and Glenn Thomas thinks she's innocent. So he came for you. You got to tell us more about it. You got to tell us more. All right. So let's see. He's walking through the house and he just sees how awful everything is. He goes upstairs. This made me sad. Well, I mean, the whole thing makes me sad. When he went upstairs, he said it was even more distressing. The guest bedroom had been ransacked, nothing left. The boys' rooms laid bare as well, all except a crib mattress haphazardly tossed onto the floor. Ben's bed and Lincoln's crib were gone, as was the changing table, toys, stuffed animal, and most of the clothing in their closet. But what was most disturbing were the walls, which, prior to Dan's trip, had been covered with colorful letters to help his boys learn the alphabet. All 26 letters were gone. To his surprise, though, the bed he shared with Wendy until he left for New York was still in place, as was much of that furniture. At least he saw he would have a place to sleep. And centered perfectly atop the neatly arranged comforter was a legal document, a 10-page divorce petition. So this was, again, September 10th, but he noticed that Wendy had actually signed it September 5th, so 5 days prior, and that was before he'd even left for New York. And her lawyer had completed one of the required forms on August the 23rd. So this was not something decided while he was out of town. So then Epstein kind of goes on to say that there had been clues that were leading up to this. You know, had Dan bothered to even crack open, this is our story, to see that Josh Stone was basically the same character, you know, as Dan Markel. Also says Dan did not wear a wedding ring, just like Josh in the book. I know we've heard other accounts that he did read the book, so I don't know I don't know what's fact and what's not. I'm just reading this. Jenny says she took his kosher food. Jolie, if Dan was abusive, Wendy would have had clear, documented, detailed descriptions and photos, right? How long was he in New York before Pearl Harbor? I think just a few days. I don't know if it actually details exactly when he went up there, but just a few days. Beach chillin'. Hola all. I saw Glenn Thomas mentioned. Does anyone actually believe he's a real up and coming author since 2016? Yeah, has he ever published his book? I mean, he keeps saying he's going to, and that he's got proof on Instagram. So I'm ready to see it. I mean, we want justice. We want to hear all sides of it. So let's see. She talks about how Dan had confided in all her friends that he was too absorbed in his career. Um, she also said she wanted a divorce since early 2011 when Lincoln was an infant. They did end up in counseling. Dan said she would be penniless, according to her words. She says she fell in love with the wrong man. She says, Danny used to tell me everyone thought I was such a nice and such a good person. He was convinced I had deluded everyone but him. Isn't that something that she says to Jeff too? That like just Dan and Jeff were the only two that had figured her out. He says, Epstein states, Wendy's approach was to avoid confrontation at all costs. She retreated and withdrew, often employing the silent treatment as her weapon of choice. And that annoyed Dan all the more. You know, he was a debater, right? All right. So then he also talks about, this was one of their big divides was, he says, quote, each approached life as a Jew. To Dan, being Jewish was his very essence, his soul. He was determined to instill the same identity and sense of roots in Ben and Lincoln. Wendy's view of Judaism was altogether different. Having grown up in a family where being Jewish was merely a component of her cultural heritage and not something that defined who she was. Blue River. I posted a screenshot on my channel. I'll have to look. He says Wendy's innocent. He's writing a book like a bot. He wrote in response to Audrey, my Adelson's Mental Institute. Hope you loved it. He has been writing this book for years. I mean, let's see it. True Crime Wifey. Wendy signed yearly leases for Aqua Ridge, so she got the house under her mom's name August of 2012. Set it up and waited for Dan to be at the conference he organized. Very well planned. Yeah. Premeditation. Sidebar Snoop, the latest Adelson coverage and the Blaze Taylor coverage has convinced me that there are a crap ton of make-bot profiles in our chat rooms. Oh, for sure there are. I mean, I'll see like subscribers, it'll fluctuate, and some days it'll drop 8, and then other days it'll go up 20, and a lot of that is just bots. Maybe YouTube shutting down their accounts. Ruth Ann, I thought she never loved Dan. Yeah, I know, True Crime Wifey. Penniless? What? Her parents were wealthy, and she was making over 100 a year. Right, exactly. And not to mention, I mean, come on. She would know she would get something. Give me a freaking break. Passive-aggressive Wendy. Yeah. Jilly, sounds like Dan did what most mothers do. Start to focus on the boys and not the other parent as before. I think Wendy felt ignored and not the center of the universe. Yeah, and Dan was the star of the show in Tallahassee. It wasn't Wendy, in my opinion. All right, talks about something else that was fraying on their fabric of their relationship was that Dan didn't seem to pick up on social cues and body language without the awareness or concern over how friends or acquaintances would perceive his words and actions. And if y'all remember when they were engaged, they almost broke it off because Wendy was upset that Dan got into a major debate with one of Wendy's friends. and really offended her friend. But y'all, he was a debater, right? He was a criminal law professor. I mean, he loved to debate people. So we know he was a little more left leaning, and he really enjoyed debating the more conservatives. He says he could be rude or annoying without realizing it. But really, deep down, his warmth, desire to connect people together, and genuine interest in their welfare. Some found his social quirks charming and endearing. And early in their relationship, Wendy was of similar mind. Yup. So there you go. All right. So then Lincoln was about to be born, and Dan had tenure. And so in the spring of 2002, Wendy was pregnant, and Dan got to request leave for teaching responsibilities, and he was granted that, and he was allowed to take off the entire 2011 calendar year, which was a huge perk reserved only for the most accomplished professors. Lincoln was just 2 months old. Dan had 13 months of empty space on the calendar to recharge, decompress, and reconnect with his Osita and enjoy his 2 cubbies. But Dan and Wendy had different ideas, Epstein says. He took this as a time to travel. He would spend about a week each month in the Big Apple, residing in housing furnished by NYU, not to mention trips to Arizona, Boston, Virginia, Connecticut, San Francisco, South Carolina, Iowa, and Washington, D.C. to attend academic conferences and present his latest articles, as well as 2-week pleasure trip to Israel. His extensive travel schedule left Wendy fully responsible for the kids, far more than she cared to be. This was just a beginning of her new role as a clinical law professor. So it was the same time as that. So what does she do? She calls her mom in to help. All right. I want to mention the ring as well. So, in August of 2012, they had also, so that would have been just, weeks prior to the Pearl Harbor Day. They took a trip with Tracy and Jeremy Cohen and Courtney and Darren McMahon. So recall, Tracy and Jeremy Cohen, y'all lived down the street. They lived on Trescott, and they had actually set them up years prior, and then they got married. And Tracy and Jeremy sided with Dan in the divorce. You got to usually choose a side. And the day of the shooting, Tracy was at work and she got a call about it on Trescott. And she had sent a text to Dan, never heard back. When she gets home, the police were like, something's happened. So Jeremy was one of Dan's friends that went to the hospital, and he sat with him for like an hour while he was on life support. So they had all been on a trip just weeks prior. So they go to St. George's Island, which is on the Gulf of Mexico. It's about an hour and a half from Tallahassee. And as they were all unloading their cars, Wendy pulls all the ladies aside, swears them to secrecy. She said she was finalizing her plans to leave Dan and would be doing so when he left town next. Her husband of 6 years was standing just feet away as he was loading the boys in the stroller. So we all know that Dan finally made contact September the 11th. When he returned from New York, he contacted her and persuaded her that he would file kidnapping charges unless she let him see the kids immediately. She relented. They ended up meeting for ice cream so he could see for himself that the boys were still in town and were fine. Alan and Lynn Grossman accompanying her. Weren't they the people that were that she went and stayed with the night, Alan and Lynn, the night of the shooting? Sidebar, Steve. Do we know if Harvey's still living at the Icon by himself? I don't think it's in the Continuum. No, it's at the Icon. Yes, I believe so. Yeah, Jolie, exactly. Dan was a superstar. To our knowledge, to our best of our knowledge, he's still there. Yes. MW, I think Wendy looked at being Jewish almost as most people look at the nationally instead of the religion. Yeah. Sidebar Snoop. They were really living a charmed life. Dan recognized this. Wendy didn't. True crime wifey. Wendy was jealous. She wanted to be jet setting the nation and world. Yes. MW. She should have recognized these things before she married, right? Crows and Gallows. I don't believe Wendy asked Donna for help. Donna was already on her way. Yeah, I think you're right. Sidebar Snoop. If Dan had stayed at the big firm in DC, Wendy would still be with him. Maybe. I mean, yeah, we don't know. Good point, though. True crime wifey. Tracy was texting Wendy in the interview with Isom, and Wendy was pissed. Yeah. MW. She should have realized things about him that bothered her before she married him. I told a neighbor who married a man who didn't want to work. Why didn't she notice that before she married him? And it's always like I have girlfriends that'll complain like their husband travels or he works all the time. And maybe not at this stage in life, but when we all had younger kids. And it's kind of like, hey, sister, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, you like to be able to stay at home. You like your country club membership, or you like to be able to play tennis. You like that your kids are in private school. You like that you don't have to work. Well, that's going to come at a price. Generally, husbands are going to have a career that's very demanding. That's just the way it is. Hey, Ruth Ann, glad you're home from your walk. Yeah, true crime wifey. Hi. Yes, same. Alan and Lynn that picked up the boys at Creative. Thank you. Hey, Judy, tuning in while eating. So Wendy takes the boys, right? So Alan and Lynn accompany her, hoping her presence would help to keep him calm, from his anger. So Dan's parents were just about to arrive in a few days anyway for the Jewish holidays. Wendy even allowed the kids to spend a few days at their home on Trescott Drive. The immediate crisis averted. But Dan realized she'd also taken the boys' passports, which would prevent them from traveling with him to Toronto to visit his parents and sister's family. Their safety deposit box at the bank had been emptied of its contents, mostly jewelry. Among the valuable items stored there, and of immense sentimental value to Dan, was the 2-carat diamond engagement ring his great uncle Laser had given his great aunt Rachel. Excuse me. The very same one he'd slipped on Wendy's finger in Israel when he proposed. His wife had helped himself to more than $300,000 in their Charles Schwab investment account, exactly half the balance, in the entirety of a second Schwab account valued at approximately $50,000. Dan also had learned that she had been planning this attack for months. Then I thought it was ironic that, she was very stingy at not letting him see the boys. So the one place he realized he could see the boys would be at the preschool, where he would find himself going for breakfast, circle time, or lunch. Yet seeing them for just an hour made the desperate father crave his children even more. By late September, he couldn't take it anymore. He barged into Wendy's office at the law school and angrily demanded that she provide an address and telephone number to her new home. He threatened to press federal kidnapping charges. So y'all will recall Georgia will ask about this in the trials. And Wendy's always like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. Startled and afraid, she relented, which for the moment at least prevented the powder keg from exploding. Yeah, true crime wifey. $350,000 she took. Oh, good point, Sidebar Snoop. We're all thinking about this marriage like normal thinking people. Donna and Wendy were thinking about this marriage as a social money climbing arrangement. Yeah, that's a good point. Judy says, yes, they wanted his genes and prestige. Thought he'd make big bucks as a corporate lawyer, but then he decided to pursue academia. Yeah. MW, Wendy might have had money, but she was classless. So Dan was sending her lots of different emails. They did agree on her bringing the boys to a Halloween party that was being thrown by a mutual friend, and that was going to give Dan a chance to spend some quality time. I just thought it was so ironic because this was 2012, and we know that Charlie met Katie on Halloween 2013, but I just thought it was crazy to have another like significant day of Halloween. But anyway, Wendy nonetheless never showed up because she had learned that Dan was saying bad things about her and that he was telling people she was mentally ill. She clearly wasn't going to give their marriage another try and didn't have the slightest reluctance using the kids as pawns to cause him pain. Battle lines now drawn, the war was about to begin. Good morning, skier. Crows and gallows. Remember when Wendy lied on the stand and said Dan saw the boys the next day? I think though this says yeah, they did see each other that day, but it was with Lynn and Alan getting ice cream. I mean, hardly. Skier. She was creating a parallel reality. Yeah. Beach chillin'. Hey, Judy, have you ever wondered if that is where Donna and Wendy came up with the name Gibbers? Yeah. Little Miss Red Velvet. Wendy is the author of her own narrative, but is she in control of the next chapter? Ooh, Little Miss Red Velvet. I like that. Melissa, hey, I didn't read or have the book. Just came on to say hi watching Wimbledon. Have a nice Sunday, everyone. Hey, Melissa. Will do. Melissa, oh yeah, this is about the Markel murder. This is Extreme Punishment by Stephen Epstein. So he has a lot of details. I mean, Judy, can you share? I know you interviewed him. I mean, is this all factual? Where does he get these details? I want to know what his sources are. I would love to know more about that. Like, how does he know what Donna was saying to Wendy when they saw him on J-Date? Judy says, Dan was telling the truth. He was probably concerned and not just trying to smear her name, needing mental health treatment. Even Jeff said she lied constantly. Great point. Beach chillin'. A European fairy tale about a clever talking cat who uses trickery and deceit to secure wealth, power, and a princess for his penniless master. Yeah. I thought it came from Gibbers, came from that book as well, or the nursery rhyme. But I don't know how they equated it to him. But I do think there's a lot of, oh, yeah. So Judy says, I'm guessing Epstein spoke with a bunch of Dan's friends in Isom. Yeah, and I think he had a lot of FOIA. I mean, I do think a lot of this, yes, I think it's factual. He's a good writer. All right, chapter 10 is relocation. So, all right, now we get into all the different attorneys. So, although, there's an old adage about representing yourself from Lincoln. It says, a man who represents himself has a fool for a client. And Dan was quite tempted to ignore that, but he ultimately did retain a divorce attorney, Thomas Duggar, a Florida State grad. One of his colleagues had highly recommended. The guy was pretty young. And I could not find a website for this guy at all. I found his picture, but I don't know, do people just not have websites or what? So this guy, top left, is who I found. Judy says, in fact, some friends were mad after Steve's book, an interview, and felt like he used the Jewish connection to get them to open up. Interesting. So that was his very first attorney. But we all know that, Dan had said like he was basically calling the shots of things. All right. Duggar had said he felt it was, and Dan, of course, Dan felt it was certain it was only a matter of time before Wendy began pushing to move to South Florida and their toddlers. This was referred to, as we all know, relocation. Donna had been spending more time in Tallahassee helping Wendy with the boys than at home in South Florida. Donna was having her choose between Wendy's husband, beloved son, and the family dental practice on the one hand, and her daughter and grandsons on the other. So we see Donna's having a lot of influence. So then Wendy hires her first attorney, who is Shannon Nove. This is her. And Shannon would not file for relocation because she was like, I'm not going to pursue that. It's not going to happen. And that made Donna really mad. So I've got Shannon's photo or her website up on the screen. Within weeks, though, Wendy changed her attorney to Kristen Adamson, which we all know who testified in Donna's trial. With 24 years experience in family law, the main reason they switched was because Wendy wanted to try to pursue the relocation, or should I say, Donna did. And the Harvey and Donna were paying the attorney. Okay, and I thought this was interesting. I don't know where we have gotten this, but for a long time, we've all been saying she had $1 million offer. It was nowhere near that. I don't know where that ever came from. Dreamscape. Judy, was it you that did the interview with this author? Yeah, she did. She did. Yes, that's right. True Crime Wifey. Jay Bronius interviewed Thomas Ducker's ex-wife. Great information. It is. You're right. I clicked on that last night. Beach chillin'. I pasted a clip about Wiki. Oh, I think Wendy and Donna compared Dan to Pib. Wendy tricking Wendy into marriage while working as a high-priced litigator. Oh, interesting. Judy says, yes, she interviewed him in 2022 when his book was about to be released. I'd helped him review a draft, and back then I wasn't even sure if Wendy was involved, but I was really surprised when he made all his points about why Wendy wasn't involved, his opinion. But he's since changed that, correct? Sidebar Snoop. I think it came from Donna's version of the money offer. Judy, is Jay still covering this case? He blew up at me after I had Vince on and told me to never show parts of his content again. I was taken aback since I supported his channel and even gave him a small donation. I thought we were YouTube friends. Interesting. I guess, I don't know. You mean the $1 million offer for Dan to move to Miami, saying it didn't happen? He sort of threw up his hands on STS. Interesting. Okay. So this is about Wendy's job. This is on page 161 in the book. Wendy had secured a job offer from Grossman Roth, PA, a reputable personal injury firm with 2 offices in South Florida. One of its senior partners, Gary Cohen, had been very close with Donna and Harvey since Wendy was in diapers. He was more than happy to facilitate her employment in South Florida as a medical malpractice attorney. Adamson filed Wendy's petition to relocate in January of 2013 with an email confirming her Grossman Roth job offer at an annual salary of $115,000. Y'all, where did we ever get that she had received this huge offer? Sidebar Snoop says, Judy, he blew up at many of his subscribers over politics. Oh, wow. Ruth Ann, I was thinking Epstein never thought Wendy was guilty. I think maybe when he wrote this, y'all, but I've heard differently now. I believe when I've seen interviews. I could be wrong. Judy, yep, they're all sorts of YouTube drama, but ultimately we want to support Dan's family and get Wendy. I know, I just don't understand. I mean, are we for justice or are we for making money or what are our motivations here? I mean, I don't agree with a lot of Dan's politics and things, but that doesn't mean that I think he doesn't deserve justice. I don't agree with a lot of YouTubers, but that doesn't mean I don't, I'm going to just only flood my information with stuff I agree with. I mean, that's the whole problem, y'all. You can make your feed what you want. So then you start believing everything you see. I mean, that's why people are sick of mainstream media. Melissa says Jay is covering cases again. I believe he was off for a while, but came back. Yeah. It used to be called Jay Bronius, or it used to be called Shaming of Jay, and now it's Jay Bronius. I really liked his stuff. Dreamscape. I have a feeling that Epstein did not want to be sued by Wendy. I believe she had some kind of contact with her before publishing the book. Yeah, you're exactly right. True Crime Wifey. Gary Cohen testified in divorce court for Wendy and said that Wendy had the offer. I don't know if he said an amount. Yeah, we heard it was a big job. But if she was making 100 at FSU and this is 115, so you're going to get a $15,000 increase and you're going to move from Tallahassee to Miami, that's going to be less of a lifestyle, right? I mean, to me, you would need at least double. Correct. Yep. Money and clout. There you go, Blue River. Dreamscape. Lots of egos on YouTube. Yeah. What is it, True Crime Wifey, you say? The streets of the YouTube. It is an ugly world. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff. It's like, you know what? This is craziness. You really can't trust people because you don't know who they are. They can put a picture, they can put a screen name. You really don't know who they are. You don't know. You don't know if maybe somebody's really got a criminal record. Maybe somebody really isn't even able to travel to this country. Maybe somebody's a felon. You don't know what someone's take is. Maybe someone's trying to sue a subscriber to get their estate. Did y'all see that on Web Sleuths? It's craziness. You think Stephen was giving her the benefit of the doubt? I mean, yeah, you got to remember, this book was a long time ago, 4 years ago. I think things change. There are people that change their mind. Judy says, it was Donna, the exaggerating idiot, who said in an email that Wendy could make millions if only she would work for Gary in his law firm, right? Like if she got like a big ambulance chaser case, Judy. Oh, thanks, True Crime Wifey. Jay did post about Charlie's appeal being denied. Okay. Skier, thanks. Yeah. Sidebar Snoop. There are justice seekers. There are money seekers. It takes a while to figure out who is who. If somebody's constantly online asking for super chats and they've got all these different links on how you can send money, I don't know. It bothers me. I mean, yeah, look, it takes time to do this stuff. I'm not going to lie. Do I have stuff monetized? Absolutely. I mean, I have some ads. Sure. But like, I'm not expecting y'all to send me Venmos and PayPal. I'm not doing that. That's my decision. But yes, it does take time. I've been editing a Blaze Taylor video now for, I don't know, 8 hours. Hope to post it today. And you'll look at it and be like, how in the heck did that take 8 hours? But it is some time. So what's the big deal if I put ads with it? If you have premium, you don't have to see them. Melissa, Wendy isn't suing anyone until she's volunteering because she'd be volunteering to enter the courthouse and she's not going to do that. Yeah. Yep, you don't know who anybody is. Exactly. Judy, yes, Leslie. That wasn't really, especially since Wendy would have to work a lot more on medical malpractice firm. She'd have cushy life working for FSU, right? Because those medical malpractice, they're on call all the time. I mean, they're over at ERs at 2 a.m. trying to get an exclusive on a bad crash. Skier. Rob said Donna was talking about a $1 million offer. I don't know if we're confusing. So there's the job offer. We thought she said she could make millions, but then there's also the offer of paying Danny $1 million. So I think we're kind of crossing those. Those are two different things. Oh, John Smith, that thing on Web Sleuth happened multiple times. Can y'all imagine if like some of y'all were to pass and I'm like, yep, John Smith, he promised me some of his estate. I'm going to go after it. There are people out there doing that. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, exactly. It's a big commitment, y'all, doing this YouTube. I don't, and it does cost, but we all choose to do it. I mean, StreamYard's what, $80 a month? I don't even know. CapCut, but we make those choices. It is very time consuming. Yes, it is. But you get, like, as you know, Blue River and anyone else who's ever edited a video, you think you're in it for 30 minutes. And next thing you know, you've lost a whole day. Take care. Oh, I know, Jenny. I can't stand it when creators are constantly saying buy them coffee. I know. And like, if people want to have that, I get it because super chats and things, a big portion goes to YouTube. But I don't like it when it's the constant, like every 5 minutes, or the people that are just like, nope, you got to send me something if you want me to keep going on. Oh, Sabart, yes, gifting membership is a great way. Yeah, I have noticed though, like if I had gifted memberships, like literally 1 month later, then subs drop. It's just like those people don't renew or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the exact number is, but I think it is a good way that hopefully then people would renew. Juliet, always love your thoughts. Wendy used her sexuality to get ahead. That was her skill, not legal expertise. Judy, you liked his interview with Yendra. He seemed cool, so I was disappointed. He was enraged. Yeah, I hate that. Well, we never know what's really going on with somebody. StreamYard's going to charge you $430 for another year. Maybe if you pay in advance, it's less. I'm going to look at that. Wendy was going to work 15 hours a week tops. Juliet, no way would hire Wendy for anything other than a window dressing. And how could she do that kind of law to be like a medical malpractice? She didn't have experience, so there would have to be a ramp up. Yeah, I've heard about that, about Gray stopping his show, wanting things. Oh, thanks, Melissa. Appreciate that. Bye, little Miss Red Velvet. Judy was doing regular school year only. She used to go to Canada with Dan for like month summers. Hey, Millie J, it's good to see you again. We've missed you. I'm glad you're back, and I'm glad you're a member again on the food truck channel. Okay. All right, let's get going. All right. So the offer was $115,000. And some of the notes, like when they filed for relocation, she was just saying it would be better for her to be close to family, more stability consistently. That also Donna and Harvey had visited every 3 or 4 weeks since they had been born, and that Dan traveled approximately 45 to 55 days away from the family each year. Again, most men that make a good income, they travel like that. I'm just saying. She says Dan created a hostile work environment and that claiming she had mental health issues. He would drop by her office unannounced. On and on and on. Also states that Dan has got some issues of his own, with his Crohn's disease and that he had episodes of vertigo and has back issues, which I don't know has issues to do with anything, that it would be easy for Dan to commute back and forth to South Florida and he could reside free of charge with two sets of relatives down in that area, including his great uncle Laser. Dan also put footnotes in the filings. The wife was gone. This was September 11th. The boys were gone. The house was half plundered. The Schwab accounts had been raided. The divorce papers were all in the bed. Most importantly, there was no indication where the wife and children were. He also belittled Wendy and saying she had never worked for a private law firm. The law school had just promoted her to the position of clinical professor at a salary of $100,000 a year. Factoring in the difference in the cost of living between Tallahassee and South Florida, she'd actually have less earning power. Dan argued that Wendy would end up with far less time with the boys, evidence of her inability to prioritize the children's well-being. And it also says that husband has no desire to further disrupt the lives of his beloved children with whom he is actively engaged in parenting. Oh, thanks, Judy, for that heads up on StreamYard. I'll be on that. Yeah, the job offer was rescinded because I don't think Gary got anybody else's approval, right? Aw. Okay. Yeah. Y'all, if people come after you hating at you, just remember they could be a robot. They may not even be a real person. There are paid media companies that have fake accounts. If you're really afraid, just make your photo like a plant or something and just make your name something that's not you. There's things you can do. True crime wifey. That's why I put the line in my song, turn a business meeting into a slow dance. Juliet, I grew up in a family of high-powered lawyers who would laugh at Wendy's resume. Bye, Blue Rivers. Nice seeing you. Okay. Dan also says Wendy for using the children as pawns, asserting that due to her penchant for deception, she couldn't be trusted to adhere to her commitments on time sharing if she and the kids moved to South Florida. He gave examples how she would not be on Skype with him on numerous occasions. She kept them away at Halloween. She did nothing to facilitate during the children's connection to the Jewish community. She introduced them to a non-kosher diet. She wouldn't permit to take them to the synagogue during her weekends, on and on and on. He also pointed out that Wendy had health issues, and he said both physical and mental. I mean, I would definitely say it got heated. So then we keep going. It was just a lot of the going back and forth of the pleadings and everything. And that Wendy would just forward her everything from Kristen Adamson to her parents, who were also paying her legal bill. And then her mom, and we know we've heard a lot of this in Georgia Kappelman's questioning. The most important part of your divorce is relocation. I sincerely hope your attorney understands that this is your, in all caps, non-negotiable. Donna wanted to make sure Adamson fully appreciated the sacrifices she and Harvey had been making, traveling to Tallahassee incessantly and for extended periods to care for the boys, to get them through a transitional time with people who love them, and that they were having decreased profits in their dental practice. And that was unfair to Charlie, who was a wonderful uncle to Benjamin and Lincoln. And he had just purchased the practice from their father in July. She calls she being Donna says that he is nothing more, that Dan is just a big bully and that he travels to NYU for his regular crap. I mean, on and on and on and on. Oh, thank you, Sidebar Snoop. I wasn't doing my rant for that, but you're very sweet. Thank you for the super chat. Very kind of you. Melissa says, I definitely agree. Wendy has severe mental issues. Oh, you're welcome, Judy. Yeah. And did you know on the 18th, True Crime Wifey is going to do a whole timeline of the day? I cannot wait because she has like such copious notes. It's going to be awesome. So I think the live is starting at 9 a.m. Eastern, if I'm correct. So that'll be 8 a.m. for me, but I'll be there. I will be there. But yeah, thanks, Judy. And thanks for all you do. So y'all follow AA Legal Focus too. I mean, we're all here because we bring different insight. And, I mean, I appreciate True Crime Wifey reading Wendy's book. I can't do it. Juliet, Judy, did someone block me from your live stream? My comments were hidden last time I participated. Yeah. Judy will check her YouTube studio. Sometimes I can tell y'all accidentally once as a mod, I was carrying my iPhone and I timeouted somebody from chat on accident. That should not have been. It can happen. Oh, Julia, I know. Well, I get timeouted, so whatever. I agree, Jenny. I would love to know more about the financials. I love the name Juliet too. Isn't there a Juliet in The Little Women, the book The Little Women? I think there is. Judy, what do you think? I don't know. I get time outed. I don't think he wants other creators in his chat, like having chatter among. That's my guess. I don't know. So I don't know. But I mean, it's his channel, so I guess he can do that. I don't do that. Like, I love that Judy's here. I'm not worried about it. Would love to know Harvey's current. Y'all, they still have money. I mean, they still have that real estate and that rental income. All right. So then this gets into the mediation. So Wendy, so it was June 3rd, 2013, and they were in Thomas Duggar's law office. So Wendy was there with Kristen Adamson, and they're doing mediation. And basically, Dan is writing things on Post-it notes for Duggar to ask Wendy. They asked her when she first wanted to relocate, and Wendy answers, I wanted to relocate for the past 6 years. So this is 2013. So that was what, 2007? So they got there in 2005? Judy, I think that is absolutely correct. But we don't know. I mean, I don't know. People are like, oh, just email him. I'm not going to worry about it. Whatever. You do you. I'll do me, Leslie B. Then Dan also said about the passports. Wendy said she needed the passports because Dan wasn't an American citizen and couldn't travel with them internationally without her written permission, which was true, as Dan had only gotten as far as securing his green card, never having had it a priority to complete the citizenship process. Did y'all know that? I didn't know that. As for his late great Aunt Rachel's diamond engagement ring, Wendy claimed it was a gift from Dan's great uncle Laser and therefore hers to keep, even though she never wore it. She agreed to surrender the ring if Dan's 96-year-old great uncle personally asked for its return. What do y'all think about that? Oh, interesting, Judy. Yeah. Some of her issues. And I love this. Without any restrictions limiting Duggar's interrogation, Wendy was forced to admit she'd been seeing a psychiatrist and was on medication for depression. Dan's lawyer asked Wendy to explain why she hadn't facilitated Skype sessions. I think it's wild that they were mediating in the same room. I don't know about y'all, but when I divorced back in a long time ago, we were in different rooms. And so the mediator would go back and forth. I mean, if we had been across the table, I don't know. I mean, I've seen in movies that they're at the same table, but that surprised me. So this was the judge that was assigned to their case. This is Judge Hobbs. And Wendy does say she would not go to South Florida. She couldn't take the kids. And Duggar is like, so you won't go without your kids. So why would you ask him to go without his kids? And she says, because we never planned on staying here. At some point, Danny will want to leave Tallahassee. So then there was a hearing on June 18th, 2013, with this Judge Hobbs presiding. So she had been on the bench definitely less than half a year. She did ask Wendy to get on the witness stand, and then, or I guess Wendy testified about things, and then Judge Hobbs had her step down and did a sidebar. And Judge Hobbs, quote, told Adamson she was unimpressed with Wendy's case for relocation. After reading the court filings and listening to Wendy's testimony, she couldn't find any basis to uproot the children and move them clear across the state. The desire to be with extended family members, the judge added, would never trump the rights and needs of two loving parents. She told Adamson she couldn't stop her from putting on additional evidence, but believed doing so would be a waste of everyone's time and energy. So then the lawyers go back to their clients. Dan calls his mom. He was relieved, telling about the judge's decision, but it was kind of opposite feelings for Denny, who got into her minivan where her mom was seated beside her in the passenger seat. And she shared everything that had just transpired. Ruth said he did ask. He wrote a letter. Good morning, late to the party. Hey, here for today. Up too late hearing fireworks. I know. Judy, drinking her dinners wouldn't help if Wendy were still taking med. Thanks, John. Yeah, I understand, John. Here for today says, not returning the ring after Uncle Laser wrote a letter is so bad. Yeah, Judy, that's interesting. See, my mediations are always with the parties in separate conference rooms. That's how it should be. If not, I think it could be very much like intimidation tactic, right? Sidebar Snoop, I worked at a law firm for years. They always did mediations in the same room. That was in New Orleans. Okay, so interesting. So mine was in Georgia. Ruth Ann, when I got divorced, the mediator went back and forth too. We were not in the same room. Yeah, I know. I'm tired of the Karen Reed case too. Dreamscape. This was all while Donna was waiting in the hall, ready to spit nickels at Dan to prove her sunshine needed to be with her. Yeah. Audrey, my ex and I were in the same room with the mediator, and 5 minutes later, he threw up his hands and gave up on us. Oh my gosh, I thought that was going to say, and he threw up on the table. That's what this case has done to me. She was cruel to Dan's 97-year-old uncle. Yeah. Here for today, she may have removed the diamond to put into another jewelry piece. She might have. I just don't see her as the type that really cares about wearing diamonds. I could be wrong, but They do them through Zoom these days. My brother went through it 2 times. Oh, I can't imagine. It'd be awful. Okay, so we went through Hobbs. I love this. Despite Judge Hobbs' ruling, Donna urged Wendy, telling her, just like it says on your necklace, never, never, never give up. And y'all know you can get those Amazon necklaces. Last time I looked, there was only one left. They're like $7 or $8. They do turn. I mean, they're cheap, but they're amazing. I gave one to Prof. Joe at Crime Con. Mine is turning so bad I can hardly wear it. I know it's different for different like skin and like what your pH is. So I don't wear mine a lot. I still want to have one made. But Donna says to Wendy, it's time to take control of your life. And then Donna outlines a 5-step plan of action because they were going to have a trial August 31st. And Donna's instructing her how to perform her act. And you can be a good actress when you want to. So these were a little different than what Georgia said in court, which is kind of interesting to me. So I don't know. I kind of did Epstein edit them, you think, Judy? Because like I don't see the Nazi uniforms mentioned in here. Sidebar Snoop, you think she pawned it? I don't know. Sometimes like I don't know. Sometimes I could see her having it and like trying it on in the closet and looking at it like, hey. True Crime Wifey, totally believe the diamond is another piece of jewelry for Donna. Yeah, I don't know. All right, so this was the 5-step plan. She wanted to send Dan a photo of boys in front of a church. Now, this is according to Epstein. And make it her profile pictures. Then 2, she says she wanted to hire a private tutor that would be preferably a teenage Catholic church member to teach the young men about Jesus. 3, she would let gibbers know that your children will be baptized in the Catholic Church. The 4th was to enroll the boys in Christian camps for the summer, which Donna had offered she would pay for all of those. And 5th was Wendy was to register the kids for toddler classes at church and that she had looked into it. And even if they didn't go, we can show gibbers they're enrolled taking to the fall semester. In all caps, take control from him. Get to him psychologically. He's going to want you to stop this. So why didn't she mention the Nazi stuff? So I feel like maybe Epstein edited it. Could be, Jenny. Maybe they took the ring for all the legal fees. Melissa, as a Jew, trust me, that ring is sentimental value for the Markels, nothing monetary. Oh, yes, I completely agree. Yeah, she lashes out at how she's really over it because she has been spending over $600 an hour and she feels like she's been wasting her time and money. For 10 months, she's been paying Adamson $600 an hour. She said all she cared about was if the father hasn't been pulling out their toenails. You should give up any financial betterment for you and your children and raise them in a place that you agreed on or go to because Gibbers only had FSU as a job offer. Of course, as a graduate of FSU Law School, a native of Tallahassee, she sees nothing wrong with living there. Obviously, as a native South Florida, you know better. Is that unbelievable? They really think they're like so much better. All right. So then Wendy kept telling her mom that she disagreed with Judge Hobbs, or disagreed with her mom, saying that Judge Hobbs would hold it against her to introducing the children to Christianity, that she didn't see that was a good thing to do. And Donna said, why not stand up to him? That effer. She says, Gibbers has tried to aggravate and screw you since day one of this divorce. And Donna was worried that she would, quote, turn the boys into 2 little Orthodox young men. She said, Ben's not even 4 years old. Wait till he's 8. This was all part of Dan's organized plan. Their entire lives will be shul, she predicted. Then Donna revealed she and Harvey plan to retain yet another lawyer to make a financial offer to Dan to persuade him to allow relocation. The amount, $1 million, split 3 ways between Donna and Harvey, Charlie, and Wendy herself. Invested properly, Dan would have $4 million in 15 to 18 years. Certainly nothing he'd ever save in 10 lifetimes. Donna says, we're a team. We can't do this without your help. That's what she says to Wendy. Melissa says Adelsons are Jewish. Yeah. True crime wife. Uniforms for the kids in another email. Okay. Yeah. Classic examples of a narcissist. Yeah. The ring is Wendy's trophy, you know. Yeah. Good to see you, Patricia. Here for today. Of course, Wendy denied she would pay 1/3 of that. That's right. She was like, it was going to be my mom, my dad, and Charlie. So then we all know they went to mediation and that they basically in the last hour compromised. It was late afternoon of July 30th. They agreed on kind of an odd schedule. He would have the boys 6 out of every 14 nights. Summers were divided 50-50, as were school years commencing in 2016. He really wanted all the Jewish holidays, but ultimately he relented, agreeing to alternate Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Passover. Dan was to pay $841 per month in child support and be responsible for 65% of the boys' preschool and extracurricular activities and summer camps. Wendy agreed to forego alimony. The home on Trescott Drive would become Dan's in exchange for him paying Wendy $120,000 within 60 days. He also agreed to pay $10,000 in Wendy's attorney fees directly to Kristen Adamson. So it was about 7.5 years after they had gotten married that they got divorced. Of course, they had been separated for almost a year, or they had been in the process for almost a year. Dan sent an email to all his friends telling them that he actually wound up getting 24 weeks of parenting, which was close to 50-50. And he said, let the healing begin. So then in December of 2013, Dan travels to another Praw Fest out in Los Angeles. About this time, he had a blossoming relationship with Amy Adler, a law professor at NYU. And he was with some friends, the Schreiers. He was telling them how he had deflected Donna and Harvey's best shot and defeated them resoundingly, quote. He told them he was now less concerned about the Adelsons, convinced he had the upper hand. Dan's victory lap about his legal triumph left them unsettled. The Schreiers had met Donna and Harvey and had heard plenty of Dan's stories about them since Pearl Harbor. They had a sixth sense that getting under Wendy's parents' skin and riling them up could have serious consequences. It's crazy what you can kind of look back on and think about. Juliet, 2 little Orthodox young men who love God instead of Satan worshipers. Yeah, right? Oh, that's a new term. Juliet says Genos, Jino, Jews in name only. Thanks. I hadn't heard that one. Skier, right. But Charlie, and he wasn't going to cover her share, and seemed like he was also hoping she would reimburse him for his share. Yeah, my brother would be like, I'm not giving $333,000 for what? It's crazy to me how much this author had access. I know. Judy, it's weird how Wendy, then joined a synagogue and had the children's bar mitzvahs there. Great point. I wonder how the people there felt as they watched the trials. Great point. These details were from Donna's emails. Julia, my brilliant lawyer dad in 1972 tried to get custody or partial and couldn't. Mom moved us 3,000 miles away. Right. It was such a different time in the 70s for sure. Yeah. Men didn't get custody, but they do now. The courts are very much pro dad or really just pro parents. Like the days of sole custody, unless you can prove something pretty outrageous. Didn't Dan think Dan was in danger, but didn't mention it? I think it was later on. Oh, Judy says he made a trip to Canada to visit Dan's grave. Who did? The son? All right. Oh, Duggar's ex-wife mentioned it on YouTube. Yeah. All right. Gloves off, chapter 11. This is the last one we're covering today. So even though they had agreed and done this marriage settlement agreement, Dan refused to comply. He did not pay the $120,000 and the 10 to the lawyer. He paid Wendy $54,725.38. She asked where the money was. He said he had compelling reasons not to pay the remainder. So then Adamson had to file a motion to enforce. The hearing was scheduled for February 17th, 2014. It was a contempt of court hearing. He accused his ex-wife of filing false and misleading financial disclosures and outright fraud and perjury and failing to disclose over $240,000 in assets on her financial affidavit, and by refusing to surrender his great aunt's diamond ring despite his 96-year-old great uncle's written request for its return. So to me, they're both in contempt. He also talks about he wanted the judge to send a strong message that dishonesty and malfeasance will not be tolerated by this court by lawyers, regardless of whether they are advocates or clients. He said, Wendy isn't just a lawyer, but rather a clinical law professor, instructing the next generation of lawyers how to comport themselves. He also says she is a 34-year-old public interest lawyer, the winner of numerous national fellowships and prizes, who simply helped herself to over $600,000 in cash, liquid equities, and other assets upon separation. Her wealthy parents had placed her in a financial cocoon, and that it was a frivolous relocation petition. And he also starts saying that Wendy had false testimony. He describes the pillaging of the home, everything that Wendy took. So, I mean, they're like back and forth. So then Dan gets another attorney. This time it is Scott Snavely. And Judy, I don't know, have you met these people? I mean, you can't really see much, but this is his LinkedIn. He's been an attorney now for 26 years. He went to University of South Florida, and then he graduated Florida State Law in 1994. So it's this guy right here on the top right corner. That's Scott Snavely. Julia, you said Amy Adler was a threat to Wendy. Yeah. True crime wifey. Money goes a long way with some churches and other religious institutions. No, Church of Scientology. Jenny, in my opinion, that ring was given to Charlie to get money since he could hang with a shady crowd. A That's an interesting strategy or thought or opinion theory, Jenny. I hadn't thought about that. Sidebar Snoop, the last name of this author is making YouTube crazy. I wondered this saying, Juliet says, I would have distanced myself from Adelson's if I had been one of their friends. By the time the bar mitzvah, it was clear the murder was a family affair. Oh, Julia, you heard the synagogue in Miami didn't want the Adelsons, so the bar mitzvah was moved. Yeah, we've seen it was like outside at a it was at a restaurant. It was on like a patio on the water. Patricia, I couldn't stand my ex at the end of our relationship, but my dislike of him doesn't even come close to the fierce love I have for my kids. So interfering with the relationship with their dad, who loved them, was out of the question. That's because you're an awesome person. Sean Smith, I read where the Mormon Church has a settlement day once a year to make sure members 10% has been paid or they can't go to the temple. I've heard something about that. Judy, maybe they felt sorry for the boys. A child commented on my channel over a year or two ago saying the boys just disappeared quickly. They found out later they'd moved away. Oh, that's so sad. They missed them and were sad. True Crime Wifey. Wendy was dating Miguel and lied about it during her deposition. Leanne says, while I was out walking, I was thinking Dan was devoutly Jewish while the Adelsons were socially Jewish. Yeah, it's frustrating how much Wendy lied in court. Blue River, you're back. Always good to see you. We're not far from wrapping up. Judy, that's right. True Crime Wifey. She was probably already messing around with Miguel before ditching Dan. Yeah. Beach chillin'. Hey, True Crime Wifey, did you find Fulford's questioning about the trip with Miguel to Puerto Rico weird? I wondered if that had something to do with the original hit attempt. Oh, sidebar Snoop. My parents divorced when I was 9. My mom spoke badly about my dad every day. My father never said anything bad word about my mom. Guess who I'm close to? Yep. That's one thing when you go through divorce, you have to take these classes. And if you're smart, you get therapy too. But they say, do not talk bad about it because your child is half that person. So when you're saying bad stuff about them, you're basically saying that about your child. Melissa, Adelsons were only Jewish when it benefited them. Yeah. All right. Gloves off. New attorney. So then they start taking depositions again. Remember how Rob, when he testified, is like, he would say that his mom said they just want to depot, short for deposition, Wendy to death. Lots of allegations, back and forth. And I don't know why, but Donna is calling him Elvis, saying we must depot Elvis, her new nickname for the ex-son-in-law. She despised him more with each passing day. Also, she wanted him to have psychological testing. Donna wanted Dan to. So then on March 16th, 2014, there was another counter motion, this one cutting straight to the core of Wendy's role as Ben and Lincoln's mom and Donna as their grandmother. Wendy had missed well over 18 required telephone calls during the first 5 months following their settlement agreement. She also did not facilitate any contact on 12 of the 19 days she had them. And that when they would speak, they would be in a very noisy environment. She would ignore his plea to speak to the children when he wanted to wish them good night while he was out of town because his call came in slightly after 7 p.m. Judges don't like that stuff. I mean, you cannot be that stickler because judges are like, that's not reasonable. And then also, of course, something we all know, right of first refusal. So if Wendy had plans in Tallahassee, but she had the boys, technically, then before she got a babysitter, she should offer the time to Dan. But instead, her mom would come up from Miami. So he accused this of parental alienation. Then there were 3 separate occasions prior when Dan wrote that the boys told him, "Abba, Grandma says you're stupid." And the children replied jointly that this is because she says you are trying to take her sunshines away from her. And then during a phone call in December, while Wendy and the kids were in Coral Springs, Lincoln told him, "Abba, Grandma says she hates you." So Dan expressed dire concern that continued exposure to such negativity forms the foundation for parental alienation. So then Donna does just grow more and more livid through everything. She was livid, making personal attacks. If Jivers won this new motion, what would it mean for the relationship with her precious grandkids? I mean, she's on and on and on. And that litigation was taking its toll on Wendy. And Dan had different legal pleadings. And he accused her and Adamson of having unclean hands, which again, I just thought was interesting because, I mean, I know this is stretching, but it's just, the parallels. When Wendy was questioned by Isom that day after the shooting, and they're like, "Have you washed your hands?" And she's like, "No, I haven't washed my hands since noon or this morning. I'm absolutely filthy." I just thought that was kind of interesting. So Adamson had to withdraw. And then Wendy hires another attorney, and that was Jimmy Judkins. So that's the attorney that called Isom that day. A lot of people think that was Laura, but she hadn't retained him yet. So when they leave for Miami, so he shot on that Friday, and then they leave for Miami on that Monday, and Isom calls Wendy, and she's like, "We have a bad connection." And then they get off the phone, and then moments later, Jimmy Judkins calls Isom and says, "I'm her attorney. You can call me." But it just goes back and forth through all the different filings and things. But Snavely withdrew from Dan because his wife was Judkins' paralegal. So it was a conflict. It's a small city that Tallahassee is. Judkins' paralegal just happened to be Scott Snavely's wife. Though that didn't present a formal conflict of interest, Snavely informed his client that he wasn't willing to have his own marriage jeopardized by Dan's continuing battles with Wendy. He too withdrew and helped Dan find his own third lawyer. So Snavely withdrew from Dan as counsel because Wendy's new attorney, Judkins, Snavely's wife. Okay, just making sure I said that right. All right, so we're winding down here. It says Dan was just obsessing over everything. He had a friend and colleague who taught criminal law at the University of Tennessee, Neil Cohen. And the Cohens had a divorce, and they were a great example of how post-divorce life could be. But Dan just could not see that. So meanwhile, Wendy is having all these misdeeds, the financial affidavit with false disclosures, which is a big deal. You have to fill out this thing called a financial affidavit, y'all, when you're getting a divorce. And it's everything. I mean, it's any bank account, it's any retirement account, it's any credit card, checking account, anything that remotely has your name on it has to go on it. And you can't go moving stuff around. Dan also talks about his great aunt's ring. She wasn't letting him speak to the boys or see them during custodial days. And Dan was contemplating filing complaints against each to have them disbarred. Excuse me. His friend Lieb had said, "You've got to stop fighting about all this crap. It's driving you crazy." Is a effing ring really that important? Is the world going to explode if you don't speak with your kids for a day? Look at all the good stuff going on in your life. You need to let go of all of this negativity. Your work is suffering. You're going to ruin your life if you keep fighting about a stupid piece of jewelry and all this other garbage. It's time to get yourself out of the muck. So then he says, despite Ethan Lieb's intervention, Dan was thrown right back into the muck. On July 16th, he received a voicemail from someone at the School of Arts and Science, a charter school for students. Not only had Wendy rebuffed him every time he tried to discuss where Ben would attend kindergarten, she apparently had gone behind his back, entered him into the school lottery. He wanted to vent. He called a friend out in California, Jack Chen. And Chen barely got a word in edgewise, said Dan was ranting for 90 minutes about her improper financial disclosures, false testimony, her failure to follow the parenting plan's requirements on Skyping, and he was considering having her and her lawyer disbarred. Wendy said Dan did not want Wendy to get away with it, and he had to control her bad behavior. And then it just goes into July 18th, 2014. Nope. And everything that happened, how he was on the phone with Schlazer from the school, and we go on from there. So then next week, we're actually going to cover a lot. We're going to cover 6 chapters because it's part 2 of the book. So I just want y'all to know that. Part 2, police work. So we've gotten the foundation. Now we're getting into the things, all the things. Yeah, Patricia. Wendy's boys have always come second to her wants and needs. Oh, good luck tomorrow, Judy. Bench trial. It breaks my heart. What motivation did Donna and Harvey have to pull the kosher food at wedding day they agreed to? Well, because they wanted to have the food they wanted. Yeah. Judy, that's right, Patricia. A commenter said Wendy wanted the kids so Wendy could be swinging from chandeliers, and I thought it was a hilarious comment. Oh, yeah. Sidebar Snoop. I watched an old live of yours. I was surprised to hear the jail call where Donna appointed Wendy to take care of Roman's needs. Told Charlie not to worry. Not to worry. Charlie should definitely worry. Yeah, and they had prepaid child support to Bree, the mom of Roman, I think up until like through 2025 or like late 2025. So I wonder what's going on now. Y'all are talking about the Puerto Rico trip. Yeah, I never understood the Elvis name calling either. Blue River. Leanne, the only one that thrusts her pelvis is Wendelina. It's hysterical. True Crime Wifey. Kristen Adamson interfered with the judge's order about Skype as well. That's what Dan going after her too. Not just Wendy. Definitely unethical behavior by a lawyer. Happy Sunday, Rosie. Good to see you. Skier. Sounds like their parenting coordinator wasn't doing their job. Yeah. Oh, Judy. I guess Elvis always made a grand entrance like a star. So Donna thought Dan was full of himself like Elvis. Interesting. Not washing hands was calculated. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Skier. Yep. Unclean hands from the get-go. Probably as good a reason as any, but hey, Elvis and Dan were both rock stars in my book. Yeah. Dan was a legal rock star. Yeah. Very weird to not wash your hands. And whenever I go to a restaurant and I get seated, I always A lot of times before I order or after I order, I go and wash my hands because, you've touched the door, you've touched the menu, or at least Purell, but I prefer soap and water. Yeah, I agree, Patricia. Divorces between lawyers must be a total nightmare for everybody. I agree. Oh, true crime wifey. Wendy even lied about her salary at FSU in those forms. Very interesting. Yeah, and he would know what that was. Julia, I'm sure Dan had the receipts for Wendy misconduct and allegations, and that was a motivation for the hit performance. Yes, Jenny. I'm so glad we got to see Donna and Harvey's true colors. I agree. Yeah, gaslighting 101. Juliet, yep. Donna was advising and editing Wendy's legal communications regarding her divorce. So much for Wendy being a competent attorney. So true. Yep. Melissa, and lay down to Donna and Wendy. Absolutely not. Yeah, there's a reason Rob moved 1,000 miles away for sure. Yeah, Jenny, you believe that Dan was catching on to the Adelson misconduct, the cash payments? Yes, Dan was fighting for his rights as a father. Oh, thanks, True Crime Wifey. Wendy barely even practiced law, says Judy. Dan Markel's achievements dwarfed hers, and she knew she was second fiddle. Perfectly said. Audrey, my blood pressure goes up. Are we the ring? I know. Wendy was super jealous. Yeah, I didn't think the ring was stupid either. Wendy is a drama queen. Hey, Sir Tedrick. She learned from the worst one, Donna. I'm glad y'all are enjoying the book club. I feel like it's more like book presentation because I don't get a lot of people joining in, but that's okay. I enjoy it. Yeah, she's got like some law articles. I had done a video on it a while back and I looked, but I don't have it up anymore when I changed some things. Oh, it was a good video. Oh, well. Oh, why did Donna call Phil and Ruth the royal couple? Canada, I guess. Yeah, Judy. She had a couple law review essays bragging about herself. Yeah. Let's see. I think it was like Minnesota or something. Wasn't it? I was trying to find it. I have found it before. Or maybe it was St. Thomas. So this is the University of St. Thomas Law Journal. This was posted December of 2007, revised September 2009 by Wendy. Child prostitute or victim of trafficking, University of St. Thomas Law Journal. So that's one. Juliet, can you imagine Dan reading his mom to edit his divorce communications the way Wendy saw it? Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. True crime wifey, the diabolical Adelsons. Juliet, you heard Donna was never a real teacher, just a kindergarten substitute? Oh, I don't know about that. I thought she was a teacher, but whatever. I don't know. Yeah. It makes us crazy. Imagine how he felt. And when you're going through a divorce, it's awful. It is awful. Oh, skier. I know. Dan had so many to speak for him now, but still, this is so frustrating. I can't shake off the Linda Bailey performance. God, I know. Or her teeth. Oh, I mean, how do you make that kind of money? Like, you can get veneers, you can get, what's that stuff called? That's, the braces that have the buttons and you put them in your mouth. Invisalign. Does anyone know about Donna's childhood? I don't know. It was in New York. Yeah. Sir Tedrick Walker, Wendy, the pathological liar, in my opinion, couldn't help herself, even as a lawyer, to file false financials. Yeah. Oh, sidebar Snoop. Donna's social climbing reminds me of Corey Richins. They both came from nothing. It's a great point. Yes, Juliet. Reminder, no one was allowed to mention that Dan went to Harvard in Wendy's presence. Yeah. Here for today, you have the audible version. The narrator really amps up ridiculousness. Yeah. Doesn't Wendy claim that she got into Harvard or from somewhere? I thought I heard that. Julia, I bet Wendy was rejected from all the Ivy League schools. Yeah, I don't know. Wow. Judy says, don't know much about Donna, except one of her old childhood friends said Donna was a good liar who could lie to your face and you wouldn't know it. Donna was very bossy, and Fancy Fiction reported that Donna's brother stopped talking to her many years before Dan's murder. He was a plastic surgeon. Interesting. Botox, Invisalign. Yeah. All right. Well, thank y'all so much. And I hope that y'all have a great day today. And I will see y'all. So next Sunday, okay, is the part 2 of the book, but it will be chapters 12 through 17. So it's a big chunk, but it's pretty easy to read. So if y'all are on Audible, you want to listen to chapters 12 through 17. And I appreciate all of you. And I'll see y'all again soon. Thank you. I appreciate if you like and subscribe. And if you are able, when the end stream is done, feel free to hype it. Thanks. Like and subscribe, because every case has more to the story. I'm Leslie B.